Recording in progress.
And Carol and Kathleen and Mike and all of you for being here and being a part of our service today. A few announcements before we get going. Today we will be having, after our service, our first gathering of Igniting the Powers. We're going to be discussing the power of faith. Everyone's welcome if they would like to join. And these will be monthly gatherings, and we'll announce the next gathering at this one, and then we'll put it in our newsletter and stuff like that. A couple other things to talk about. We are going to start a monthly Growing in Grief gathering in September. Whether it's a death of a loved one or a cherished pet or a shift in your abilities, grief is a natural part of the world and life we navigate. And growing through grief will offer a nurturing environment to support you along your way. So we would invite anyone in the community to join us in this safe and understanding space where you can express and process your emotions without judgment, connect with others who understand and empathize with your journey. Together we can find solace and the strength in each other's company. So more about that as we move forward into the fall. If you miss a message and you can't watch it on YouTube, we have a podcast now. So if you ever have a podcast platform that you like to pull and hear inspiration, feel free to pull us up at Unity at the Lake on Spotify or Amazon or Apple or any of those other places, and you can hear our messages. My hope is to expand that beyond just our messages, to offer other kinds of maybe meditations and conversations. You never know, there might be some music from our Unity at the Lake folks that might show up on there sometime. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So just invite you all to be a part of that as well. So yesterday, watching the television, we have a television called Telly. You all might not have heard of Telly, but Telly is a free TV that you can get. And I ordered it while we lived in Memphis. And this TV comes, and the reason it's free is because it advertises to you constantly. It has a TV and then a sound bar, and then underneath it is a ticker. And it, like, you can control the ticker of what news comes by and what sports and that stuff, and then the corner, there's this little ad box over there. It might not be for you, but I was like, a free TV, it's 55 inches, I'll do it. And it's been great. We've been using it. It's lovely. It's so funny because I had kind of forgotten about it, and then all of a sudden it showed up while we moved here, and it was like, where do we put this TV? So now we have two TVs in our living room. It's like a sports bar, basically, in our living room. But anyway, yesterday was watching television, and I saw on the ticker an article came out in the Wall Street Journal that said Costco is the only thing Americans can agree on. Now, I know there is plenty we disagree on. I get that. I understand that. But there has to be some other things, right, that we can all agree on. I hope we agree on Costco. Which kind of got me thinking about this idea of the common good. And as you all know, and as we've talked about this weekend all over our country was a celebration of the life and legacy and the work of John Lewis. And on this 6th anniversary of Congressman John Lewis's death, we were joining together in Southlake and also all over the country to honor his great legacy by offering workshops and rallies and faith values and teachings on equity and dignity and trust and peace and communal responsibility and civic love that he lived out so wonderfully and graciously. And so I, this week, want to take some opportunities to offer a message in the spirit of the work of John Lewis. But first, let's talk a little bit about John Lewis, just in case we have forgotten some or didn't know about his work. Congressman John Lewis was born to sharecroppers on February 21st, 1940, near Troy, Alabama, my part of the world. As a boy, he heard radio broadcasts of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s words during the Montgomery bus boycott and was compelled to become a part of that movement. In 1960, he participated in the first mass lunch counter sit-ins in Nashville, Tennessee, which I came to find out was one of the first major cities in the South to desegregate all public restaurants and restrooms and things because of that work. He was a keynote speaker at the historic March on Washington. In his leadership role, Lewis organized voter registration efforts and community action programs all throughout Mississippi's Freedom Summer. In 1965, John Lewis joined over 600 peaceful protesters across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. And we know that the coverage of that led to the nation waking up to the injustice and the brutality that was taking part in the segregated South and moved us closer to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Lewis served as a U.S. representative of Georgia's 5th Congressional District from November 1986 until he died in 2020. He leaves a life and a legacy that is worth learning more about and worth aspiring to as we think about our work in the world and the way that we move about it. Some of you might be familiar with the book of Psalms that comes in the First Testament or the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures or whatever you would like to say and call them. And in the Psalm 106, one of the passages says, "The people who uphold justice, who always do what is right, are truly happy." And I can say for myself, I showed up yesterday at a rally that we had in the life and legacy of John Lewis, and I felt truly happy to be there. It really felt like that was where I needed to be. And I was grateful that I was able to hold up this sign on the streets of South Lake Tahoe that talks about how we are to manifest the beloved community, a quote from John Lewis. And I think that's what we do here with our work here in South Lake and across manifesting the beloved community. A part of the Teach, Preach, and Reach Good Trouble Lives On weekend initiative that we've had is that we were offered as preachers across the country who are giving messages about John Lewis some words to offer to whatever spiritual community we're a part of. And so I found these words from Dr. Yvette Blair Lavalier. It's a very difficult name to say. I hope I did it justice. But she was an adjunct professor at Memphis Theological Seminary, where I went to seminary. And she wrote about this weekend. She starts with, "We the people," 3 words that form a preamble to a cohesive collective of the common good. The thing is, though, that things are not so good, and unfortunately has become a common theme. We the people, a communal phase that is meant to amplify connection and community, yet there is discord and division because there is little regard for the people. I imagine a lot of us have been having dialogues with God lately, lifting our complaints about the patterns of injustice. Supreme Court decisions about redistricting and gerrymandering have rippling effects from generations to come. States permitting counties to make changes in where we vote, how we vote, and whether we have all required identifications to vote. And if that's not enough, in some states you must now stand in separate lines to vote, marked by your political party loyalty, creating a fishbowl where people can see if you swim in red or blue water. This puts us, we the people, in the deep sea of oppressive structures and systems that are harpooning the advancements that freedom fighters have made just so that we can vote in the democracy of the American government. There used to be a time when your vote was between you and the ballot without anyone being privy to who you voted for. Now people that you pass in the polling location know who you are not voting for based solely on what line you're standing in. In an eerie way, these separate lines are familiar of a time in our country's history when you stood in designated lines at water fountains, entrances to food establishments, and businesses based on your race, not your political affiliation. Every time there's a new law, policy, or ordinance that favors those with power and position, it becomes yet another iteration of an injustice that is legally allowed. And it makes people weary. For we, the people of faith, who sometimes choose prayer over protest, kneeling at the altar over action and advocacy, or believing that everything is in the hands of Jesus, heed these words from civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer. You can pray until you faint, but unless you get up and try to do something, God's not going to put it in your lap. Prayer is not just words. It is an act. It is awareness to see and be and do as Christ in the world. Well, the psalmist tells us that those who do right, who uphold justice, are truly happy. Don't you want to be happy? Then we need people of good faith to be good troublemakers. And I know there's some troublemakers in here, Dixie. You're not the only one. There are so many that will rally to rage and fortify their hate. But we and so many all over the country are reaching and teaching and preaching to rally for the good. One of Unity's 5 principles is that recognizing God the good and our essence as good. So as we move towards the common good, we are in fact aligning with our principles. We were invited towards igniting the powers this month by claiming the good through doing good. And I and we and all of us are good, and reflecting that in the world helps open pathways to see and feel and know God the good. But just in that same way, injustice has the same domino effect. We might not see everything immediately, but because it's reoccurring and ongoing and repeats itself, there's some incremental value and revenue, because injustice seems the currency that our country has plenty of. But people like John Lewis reminds us that building our world takes courage, community, and civil rights. Rights that he fought so hard for and that continue to be fought for today. And appeals to the common good ought not to be dismissed, for they urge us to reflect on broad questions concerning the kind of society we want to become and how we are to achieve that. They also challenge us to view ourselves as members of the same community. Perhaps our struggle here is different than another, but we are one, and Christ taught us to mourn when someone mourns. And his apostle Paul shares that when one suffers, we all suffer. So the issues in South Lake Tahoe, or wherever you might find yourself, might differ from one of another city, but there's no peace until we're all free. And as we listen and lean in towards the good, let us remember the words of John Lewis, who said, "Release the need to hate, to harbor division, and the enticement of revenge. Release all bitterness. Hold only love, only peace in your heart, knowing that the battle of good to overcome evil is already won. Choose confrontation wisely, but when it is your time, don't be afraid to stand up, and speak out against injustice. May we be people of good faith and good trouble. So it is. Amen.